Hey, I'm Kev Kermisker and welcome to Power Oversteer, and in today's episode we are reviewing the 2013 Korean Grand Prix, the 14th round of the 2013 Formula 1 season, and it was a familiar story at the front, but it wasn't a familiar looking race. There were quite a few incidents in the race, ranging from what seems to be the usual slip from a certain Force India driver at this stage of the season to an unusual different leader at the front. But as I said, it was just business as usual for one guy and one finger at the front. And so to look back at this Korean Grand Prix, you always start with the race recap. So the race recap for the 2013 Korean Grand Prix, and let's go back to qualifying, where again it was Sebastian Vettel on pole from Lewis Hamilton, where Roman Grosjean again nicked third in his Lotus just ahead of Nico Rosberg. It was all Ferrari third row with Alonso ahead of Massa, and then an all Sauber fourth row behind that with Nico Hülkenberg and Esteban Gutierrez in Q3 together for the first time this season. In ninth was Kimi Raikkonen, and Sergio Perez was 10th just ahead of Button. In 12th was Daniel Ricciardo, with Mark Webber in 13th after that 10th place grid penalty for getting 3 reprimands this season. Adrian Settl 14th ahead of his teammate the Rester in 15th. Poor for Force India ahead of John Hylton in 16th. Even worse for Williams, with Bottas in 17th, Maldonado 18th, and then Pick and Van der Garde in 19th and 20th, and Chilton ahead of Bianchi for once in the Marussia on the back row. At the start, Vettel was again good from his pole position, but Lewis Hamilton got passed by Roman Grosjean into turn 3, so the Frenchman was up to second. The rest is all Felipe Massa have a bit of a spin in turn 3, with Alonso getting collected by his teammate having to go a bit wide. Nico Hülkenberg was up to 5th in his Sauber, and Mark Webber had a good start and was getting towards the points as well. We also saw Jenson Button have some problems at the pit for new front wing after the first lap. Then it went into a bit of a pattern, and we saw Kimi Raikkonen all over the back of Fernando Alonso, and finally on lap 9 he got past the Spaniard with DRS before turn 3 up to 6th spot. And then after the first round of starts, we saw Paul di Resta have some trouble on lap 26 in his Force India. Wasn't having the best race, but he went into the tyres on the outside of turn 12 after driver air just took too much curb, and he found his car a bit too edgy after the pit stop. We also saw Webber soon pass Alonso into turn 4 to get right up there into the top 6. We also saw Nico Rosberg then on lap 28 during a pit stop phase. He was trying to get past his teammate Lewis Hamilton, got some DRS, got some clear air, then his front wing failed, and so he had to pit at the end of the lap. On lap 31 we saw Grosjean pass Perez into turn 1, who then suffered a tyre delamination, tyre failure. He had a bit of a slow puncture in his tyre, or actually it was a flat spot on his tyre, even on his right front, which just gave way. And this was just as Webber was rejoining from his pit stop, coming out ahead of Lewis Hamilton, but he unfortunately suffered a bit of a puncture. He was getting a slow puncture on his tyre from this incident, so he had to pit at the end of the lap. Well, Lewis Hamilton made his way past him, so the safety car was out. And then on that 37 it went green, and we saw Hülkenberg pass Hamilton down into turn 3. Hamilton having real problems in sector 1 for 4th place, and we also saw Settl lock up his rears into turn 3, and who would he collect but Mark Webber, whose race just went from hero to zero in a matter of laps, and so he was out of the race. Settl burst his, I think it was his oil or radiator pipe, and that meant his car was on fire, and because of this, out came a fire truck into the lead of the race ahead of Vettel. This shouldn't have happened though, and so the safety car did have to come out. But before that, Kimi Raikkonen got past Roman Grosjean into turn 1 for 2nd place in the battle of the Lotuses. And so once it came to green after the dispersed Webber car got it out the way and got the fire out, it went green. And so we had Vettel leading Raikkonen, Grosjean, Hülkenberg, Hamilton, Alonso, Button, Rosberg. Maldonado in 9th, and this is after on the first lap he got up to 9th as well, just dropping back, but he got up there again, ahead of Ricciardo, Gutierrez, Perez, Massa down the 13th, Bottas, Pitt, Van der Garde, Bianchi, Chilton, John Verne, Sirtil, and so that was the order. We saw Hamilton and Alonso fighting the turns 3 and 4 on the restart, but Hamilton just kept ahead of Alonso. Then we also saw Hamilton then have his go at Hulkenberg in front and got past him on that 48 into turn 1, but Hulkenberg DRS'd him on the next straight. And then on that 53 we saw Rosberg get past Button into turn 3 for 7th on that straight with a bit of help from DRS, but in the end it was just Sebastian Vettel at the front, winning from Kimi Raikkonen by 4 seconds. He was just ahead of his teammate Roman Grosjean. We had Nico Hulkenberg equaling his best result from Belgium last in the Force India for 4th place, ahead of Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Nico Rosberg. Good recovery after his front ring failure, up to 7th. Jenson Button in 8th after having to change his strategy totally after that one, so that was a good result from him. Felipe Massa in 9th, made some ups and spots. Sergio Perez 10th. Esteban Gutierrez just missing out on his first Formula 1 point in 11th. Valtteri Bottas 12th. Pastor Maldonado dropped to 13th after being mugged in the last few laps. He lost 4 spots in a matter of corners on one lap. Charles Picken 14th, just missing out on the result that Caterham needed to leapfrog Russia into 10th in the championship. Guido van der Garde 15th, Jules Bianchi 16th, Matt Chilton 17th. John Verne retired on that 53. Dan Ricciardo retired on that 52. Both in the Toro Rossos, both suffering from brake problems. Adrian Sittel damaged the car too much and retired on that 50. Mark Webber, of course, was hit by Sittel on that 36 and pulled the rest into the tyres on the outside of turn 12 on that 24. And that is your race recap. Let's go into the winners and losers now. So the winners and losers for the Korean Grand Prix. Let's go from the back to the front. So Marussia are first, 16th, 17th for Bianchi and Chilton. And you know, Bianchi kind of was suffering with the tyres, but you know, the safety car kind of helped him, meant he could stay to stop her, and it didn't work out for Chilton otherwise though, because Charles Pitt managed to leapfrog him in the safety car pit, and so he dropped back. And so for Marussia, who haven't even put a part on this car, a new part at least, since Barcelona, you know, it's not bad that no one was a lap down, so that's good for them. And yeah, what can you say? They're really going to struggle to beat Caterham in races in qualifying, but that 13th place in Malaysia is just keeping them ahead in 10th in the constructors, and it's going to be interesting to see if there's any races left on the calendar that kind of helps facilitate a result that could be 12th place, that could nick, you know, that 10th spot from them. It could be Brazil, it could be even Suzuka, you never know, that first corner accident, and you know, it could really smarten up the race. But yeah, at the moment they're just hanging on for that 10th place and that vital money they need, and you know, they're all pushing for next season, so it'll be interesting to see what happens next season, you know, for Marussia. For Caterham, 14th, 15th, just the usual weekend ahead of, you know, their rivals for that 10th spot, and you know, pick ahead of Van der Garde. Van der Garde had a very indifferent race, 2 drive-through penalties for him, you know, hitting Bianchi at the start, forcing him to go ride in another silly incident later. So yeah, not the best race for Van der Garde, who have been on a bit of a roll recently, and you know, Charles Pitt getting a bit of him for once in qualifying and in the race as well. Williams 12th and 13th, they can't really hope for better at the moment. Their car's not that great, and you know, Maldonado had a great start there, got up to 9th in the early stages, and then again visited 9th near the end of the race with about 15 laps to go, but just fell back, as I said, getting mugged in for 4 spots, I think it was, in a few corners near the end of the race. So yeah, he just fell back, and he had a short second stint on his tyres because they went off, and you know, Bottas was really struggling with tyre wear, especially on that right front. So you know, they're really struggling with the tyres here, and yeah, for Williams, it's just looking for next season. Mercedes engines, Pat Simmons with, developing the car there. So yeah, hopefully for next season they can do well, but this season it's just riding it out, it seems. And Maldonado reflected that by saying he'd rather stay over for it rather than drive for 2014 with the cars like this next season. So yeah, got the buck up there days for next season. Force India, just a dreadful race again for them. De Resta, he suffers this. Every F1 season seems to drop off near the end of the season. And he's doing it again. Sittel extracting more from that car, more from that Force India. Got out qualified by him, out raced by Sittel again. Even though Sittel made a dreadful mistake into turn 3 that ruined his race, he had to retire the car with too much damage in the end, and set Webber on fire, literally his car on fire. And so yeah, just another dreadful weekend for Force India, and the rest admitted to that mistake. It was a driver error. He just found the car a bit too edgy after his first pit stop and was pushing a bit too hard, took too much curve and retired. And if we look at his results recently for De Resta, 5 races in a row since Hungary, has not been anywhere near finishing even. He finished 11th in Germany, and he's just dropping off at the wrong moment. Hulkenberg's coming strong in the Sauber. Perez and McLaren have sorted out some issues, it seems, and are regular point scorers now, and it's just fallen apart for Force India at the wrong time. So Till, he's got 2 points finishes and 3 retirements in the last 5 races, so very inconsistent for Force India, and at the wrong moment in the season for it to happen. And so you always want to come on strong as the season goes on, really, such as McLaren and Sauber are doing. Toro Rosso stay pretty consistent, but for Force India, yeah, ever since those tyre changes, really, they've really just fallen downhill. So they're going to be struggling to get points, maybe even struggling to hold off Sauber in the constructors, which is crazy to think. So yeah, not going well for Force India or Toro Rosso this race. Toro Rosso, they had an overheating mechanical part, and that turned out to be, I think, the brakes. I think Ricciardo said after he came out of his car, when he was running 9th and getting some solid points again in that Toro Rosso, had to pull over and retire, and he found, I think it was the left front brake caliper was like coming off. That is really bad, just the brakes overheated, and so yeah, he retired from 9th after a very solid race from him, always on the edge of the points and then edging himself into the points. Well, for John-Eric Verne, he was just in the midfield, it seems, and stuck there, and it was all due to qualifying, basically. Ricardo 12th, Verne in 16th, and you can really since Red Bull's announced Ricardo's in that seat for next year, Ricardo's just stayed on a good level. Verne is still just stuck below him, stuck like a level down. You can kind of see why Red Bull have chosen Ricciardo over Verne, especially since that announcement. So yeah, Verne, you think he knows his future is going to be Toro Rosso next season, so it's like he's just calling it in at the moment, frankly, for Verne. So yeah, got to improve a bit for the rest of the season. But now we're going into the good stories. We're going into the teams that did quite well. We're going into Sauber. 11th for Gutierrez, just unlucky to miss out on that final point with Sergio Perez nicking it in front of him. He was lucky with the safety car, didn't work out at all for him, or else he would have maybe got his first F1 points. But Nico Hulkenberg in 4th. What a race from him, holding off Hamilton and Alonso near the end there, and taking advantage of Mercedes sector 1. They had poor pace there, Mercedes, and Hulkenberg just took advantage of that. Got past Hamilton, I said, after Hamilton passed him, and managed to build up enough of a gap in that sector 1 to hold it for the last 2 sectors, and just played to the car's strengths and took a brilliant 4th place, made no mistakes in front of Hamilton and Alonso. And very strong rumours now that he's going to go to Lotus next season. Hulkenberg and Grosjean together next season, the 2009-2011 GP2 champions. So that would be very interesting lineup, and very deserved for Hulkenberg, who's been knocking on the door for ages now to get a top seat, and looks like it finally might happen next season. But yeah, great weekend for Hulkenberg. A very good weekend for Gutierrez as well. As I said, both Saubers qualified in the top 10 for the first time in this season and going to Japan, but they did so well last season with Kobayashi, of course, getting his only podium F1 so far. So yeah, expect Sauber to again continue this good run they've done recently. And even better news, they're ahead of Toro Rosso in the constructors now. Both got 31 points, but Sauber with the better higher finish with Hulkenberg in 4th have got ahead of them. And Force India, they got double the points for Sauber with 62. But with the run that Sauber are on, especially Hulkenberg with a 5th, 9th and 4th now, and if Gutierrez can start nicking some points at the lower end, which he looks like he's capable of doing now, he's even improved in the last 4 races, 14th, 13th, 12th, 11th, maybe 10th in Japan even. So yeah, very good for Sauber at the moment. For McLaren, solid points again, especially for Button, going off strategy so early after that problem on that one, and he just held on to those tyres on that last stint. 33 laps he did on those tyres, they just fell away at the end, so he lost 7th to Nico Rosberg, but great performance from Button to get 8th, and from Perez as well to get a point after that tyre failure. He just did a flat spot on the right front and it finally gave way the tyre in spectacular fashion in front of Webber and Hamilton, as you saw. So yeah, very good from Perez and Button. And what can you say from McLaren? They're solid point scorers now, and they're pulling the gap on Force India and they're winning their battle for 5th. They're 19 points ahead of Force India now, no hope of catching Lotus. So yeah, just solidifying that top 5 finish for the rest of the season, and then going into next season where we still don't know who's going to partner Button. That'll be interesting if they do retain Perez, which I do have the feeling they will do, especially with the sponsorship. They need a lead sponsor next year. Maybe it's going to be a certain Telmex company. So yeah, McLaren doing very solidly again this weekend. Not where they wanted to be, but getting some solid points and winning their own battle in the constructors. Then we got Ferrari 9th and 6th. Alonso very disappointed with this weekend. Massa very disappointing in the race. Qualified right behind Alonso, but just fell back in the race, and especially after that spin at the third corner on the first lap. And so yeah, Massa, he did well in the last stint. I think he restarted 13th, with 15 laps to go, got up to 9th, took advantage of rise from Maldonado especially, and getting past Gutierrez as well. And so yeah, Massa did a solid overtaking at the end, but yeah, not the race he really wanted, not the race that Alonso wanted, not the race that Ferrari wanted, but it's the race that Ferrari probably expected with the pace they have in that car, which is quite worrying for the championship. And they're going to drop back to Alonso probably not really going to catch Vettel, but he's not really got any hope of catching Vettel at the moment with the pace of the car. And Ferrari just 1 point ahead of Mercedes in the battle for 2nd, so Mercedes looking stronger again than Ferrari especially, so that battle for 2nd looks like going to rumble on until maybe the end of the season. And Ferrari really got to bring some new parts to really get that car going. Mercedes 7th and 5th, not where they wanted after qualifying, 2nd and 4th I would imagine. Qualifying went quite well, but the race, there were just problems for Hamilton. He was just stuck behind someone, be it Grosjean, be it Alonso, be it even Hulkenberg, be it Webber as well for at least half a straight. He just could not get the pace going. They were struggling with the tyres as well, making sure this 2-stopper would work, which most teams were doing. And so yeah, just not working out for Mercedes. And Nico Rosberg even, not the wrong Nico. But yeah, his lug nut failed for the front wing. It just didn't secure, it just failed when he went past Hamilton around the halfway mark. And so had to pit and held on to the end, getting Button near the end for 7th. So yeah, very good pass by the Mercedes past the soon ex-Mercedes consumers. And a bit about McLaren, they're going to announce a big tech signing apparently soon. Maybe Pat Fry from Ferrari returning to McLaren, or a big signing from Red Bull apparently, according to Ted's notebook. So now we got the top 2. Lotus 2nd and 3rd, very good for them. Very strong again after that bit of a dip in the mid-season. Coming back strong, and they still had a controversy. team order controversy for Lotus this time. You know, the safety car did help their strategies, helped especially Raikkonen to jump up there to third behind Grosjean, and then took advantage of Grosjean having a bit of a bad run in those last few corners and got past Grosjean into turn one just as the safety car was going to come out for the fire truck randomly appearing on the track. And after that, you know, Lotus were putting the eggs in the Grosjean basket, you know, telling him on the radio, you're faster than Raikkonen, you know. But then Grosjean said, no, I'm not fast enough. And then after the race, Adam Permain on the radio talking to Grosjean, actually, you know, we will talk about this after the race, you know, smile on the podium, do all that, but we're talking about this after the race. So interesting goings on at Lotus. You know, Grosjean, I saw on Autosport, apparently wanted team orders to get past Raikkonen, but he wasn't allowed that, and that's probably why they were saying, you know, you're faster than Kimi, you know, make the move yourself. But you know, very interesting goings on at Lotus. You know, being putting their eggs behind Grosjean, you know, for the rest of the season. You know, with Raikkonen leaving to go to Ferrari next season. And Red Bull, what can you say? It looked like they were on for a double podium at one stage, but then, you know, Webber got that puncture from the Perez tyre delamination, you know, cut his front wing, put some shards around. And then he got hit by Surteil, but it was a very good race from Webber. It was actually pretty impressive. He was quite patient behind the Alonsos, Hamilton, Hulkenberg, Rosberg in that mid part of the race, and he jumped ahead of Hamilton just before, you know, Perez happened. And yeah, he was having a very good race, and he just got instantly taken out. So very good race for even if it didn't come out with a result, but very good race from Vettel as well at the front, just managing the pace for almost the whole race. And you know, Webber, Alonso and Horner criticised the tyres for the Korean Grand Prix from Pirelli. He was saying they're too marginal. And this is highlighted by Vettel, who suffered 100% tyre wear near the end, and so really had to manage his tyres there. But he still did the fastest lap at 141.380, led most of the race, got pole. It's just looking inedible, isn't it, for him to get his fourth title. And that fastest lap was 0.6 faster, roughly 0.6 faster than the two Lotuses who were second and third on that fastest lap chart. So tells you the advantage Red Bull have at the moment and how well Vettel is driving. He's just in the zone. And so yeah, that is the winners and losers. Very big winners, very big losers in that Korean Grand Prix. But let's end it all with of the race. So driver of the race, quite a few candidates. Of course, Vettel, the two Lotus drivers, Hulkenberg in the Sauber, maybe the McLaren drivers as well, having their own problems but getting some points in the end. But I'm going to give it to Nico Hulkenberg. And it's so easy to give it to Vettel. It's actually even harder, I think, to give it to Vettel because he didn't have much to do. But Hulkenberg in the Sauber, keeping Hamilton, Alonso, Rosberg, Button behind him near the end, and just making no mistakes and really dragging that Sauber forward. You know, he took advantage of the restarts, making his move on Hamilton, and then taking advantage of Sector 1 when Hamilton got past him, just DRS past and kept it there. So yeah, I've got to give it to Hulkenberg, I think, for equaling his best result in Formula 1 as well. As I said, Belgium last year got fourth in the Force India, so another fourth, not quite on the podium still, but in that Sauber you could be very close. You never know in Formula 1. Remember, it's if backwards, as Mike Walker would say. Team of the race, and I think I'm going to give it to Red Bull. I've already given it to the team that is the fastest, I think, Red Bull, but you know, I would give it to Lotus, you know, second and third, double podium, but Red Bull, they looked set for that double podium until Webber was unlucky, and they managed Webber's race brilliantly, I think, you know, driver and team. And they managed Vettel at the front, just managed his pace really well, and I couldn't really fault Red Bull at all this weekend. You know, even Webber qualifying third, getting the grid penalty and working his way up. So yeah, I think I've got to give team of the race to Red Bull. Overtake of the race, and I'm just racking my brain trying to find a really good overtake, and I can't really think of one. I think the best one I can think of is maybe Webber's on the inside of Alonso, as I said, you know, around halfway through the race. I think I'll give it to that. Webber down the inside of Alonso in turn 4, because I can't really think of an amazing overtake that unfortunately happened this race. It was all either DRS assisted or really tyre assisted, but no, the tyres were more even in that Webber Alonso pass. Not much DRS in use there. It's just a good run out turn 3 for Webber, I remember, going down the inside of Alonso. So yeah, I'll give it to that, Webber on Alonso. So Red Bull getting 2 of the awards, and driver of the race going to Hulkenberg rather deservedly. And that is my review of the Korean Grand Prix. I'll be back with a preview of the Japanese Grand Prix not long until that, but till then, start watching. Cheerio.